everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Mystical Munchies, featuring the Magic the Gathering Cuisines of the Multiverse cookbook. Now, before we jump into this week's episode, I do want to step on something before the comments get out of hand. You may be noticing a bandage on my left arm. Nothing to panic about. I just had some routine blood work done earlier this morning, so nothing to worry about there. Anyway, last week's blueberry scones were actually really good, so now we're on to the side this week, Ooze-Infused Biscuits. First up, let's tell the story. According to the legend, Bolus insisted on the perfect oozy biscuits to enjoy with his Homerid's bisque. The court appointed a Homerid hunter and an ooze collector to keep up with Bolus's voracious demands. The resulting dishes are still remembered as his favorites despite the ages that have passed. Well, we'll find out if these biscuits are worthy of a villain like Nicol Bolas, as the ingredients are waiting for us at the table, so let's move in that direction. In order to make this recipe, we're going to need 2 cups of flour, or 4 cups of flour, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1.5 tablespoons of baking powder, tablespoon of kosher salt, 1 1/3 cups of unsalted butter that's been cubed and chilled in the freezer for at least 20 minutes. This is going back in the freezer until I need it. 1.5 tablespoons of chives, 6 ounces of cheddar cheese, 1 2/3 of a cup of buttermilk. That'll be going back in the fridge to continue chilling, and another 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I'll need to melt that, but I'm going to put that back in the fridge as well until I'm ready for it. With that in mind, let's move into the kitchen and start putting this recipe together. The first thing we're going to do is we've got a large bowl here. So first we're going to take the flour. First we're going to combine most of the dry ingredients together. So here's the flour. Oh, easy does it. Okay, so that's actually about 2 1/4 cups, which means if I go to 1 3/4, we'll be all good. I'll make this next pour in the sink. I'm trying to do it on the sink side, that way if I get into any trouble I can just run a little bit of water and it wash down the sink quickly, in case you're wondering what all the noise is off shot. Plus it's also the canister kind of banging against itself. A little more. Normally I just use a measuring cup. Normally I'd use a measuring cup multiple times, but given the quantities, I wanted to be as precise as I could with it. So the flour can stay down because we'll be working with it a little bit later. We don't need more, well, we sort of need more of it, but we're going to be making we're going to be flouring a work surface a little bit later. Next we want the garlic powder. This time I do have a 1/2 teaspoon out for that, because multiplying fractions on these is something I can do a lot more easily. 1, 2, and 3. That can go toward the dishes. The garlic powder can go up. Then we want 2 teaspoons of sugar. And this is a 2 teaspoon measuring cup, or measuring spoon I'm using. Which that can go into the dishes, because I don't think I need that one again. No, I don't. So the sugar can go back up. A tablespoon of kosher salt, which I've got the kosher salt right here. I don't think we need the tablespoon again. No, we don't. And we need the 1.5 tablespoons of baking powder. And I will grab another 1/2 tablespoon container out, or another 1/2 tablespoon measuring cup or measuring spoon out. In fact, let me see if I've got one. Actually, I can just grab the one from the 1/2 tablespoon one from the same set, I think. No, I can't. Probably because I already used it. Or maybe that I don't have a 1/2 tablespoon from that one. Let's blast it all. Alright. Well, the next step is going to be to combine these anyway. Let me see what I've got in front of me here. No, they do have 1/2 tablespoon and another measuring cup set. Okay, that'll work out. So, now we're going to go ahead and combine this together. Okay. Next up, we'll bring the frozen butter in and combine it with our hands until it resembles coarse cornmeal. So I've got the butter that I put back in the freezer. Okay. All right, we can put all of those in the garbage. And then we'll combine this until it resembles coarse cornmeal. Okay. Obviously the butter isn't going to break down too far because it is still mostly frozen. But I think that's probably about as good as we're going to get there. So I'll give my hands a quick wash. And then we'll take our initial batter. Well, it's not really batter. It's basically coarse cornmeal. We'll put that in the fridge. And then I'll set a kitchen timer for 15 minutes. So it's going to seem like like a moment later by the power of editing, but in reality, we'll be coming back to this in about 15 minutes. Now with the dough out of the fridge, now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the chives. Once it decides to open. And of course, we've got to take the freshness seal off. There we go. Took its sweet time. We'll grab a fresh wooden spoon out for that because I'm looking ahead to the next step after this one coming up. So it's a tablespoon and a half of chives, which I managed to find another half tablespoon measuring spoon. So 1, 2, and 3. And the cheddar cheese, we're just going to dump the whole package in. And then we'll toss that until it gets well dispersed. Actually, we can probably just use this spoon for it. Technically, I was going to say not tossing it, but it'll do the same job. All right, that'll work. And now we'll add the buttermilk in, and we're going to stir this until the dough just barely comes together. Actually, before we do that, I need to check something here. Okay, actually, it's not going to even go in that form, I don't think. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because now we need to add the buttermilk. Which I've got the buttermilk right here. So we want 1 2/3 cups of it. Let's see, that's 1 2/3 of a cup. Actually, let me see if I can scrape some of this out so I can see the edges to be able to actually read the meniscus. Because when I'm measuring liquids, being able to read the meniscus is very much a thing I need to be able to do. Just barely. And then there's maybe like we'll just add the rest of it in because there maybe... It's probably going to be a little more liquidy than I'm expecting, but... Hopefully that's not going to impact anything too much. There's maybe like a splash or two left of the buttermilk after I got what I needed out. So hopefully adding that extra splash or two in isn't going to cause a big problem. But we want to mix this until the dough just barely comes together. Alright, so now that we've got that, now we're going to transfer that to a floured work surface, and we're going to knead that until it just comes together. So we'll get some flour here. Flour up a work surface. Okay. That should be good enough. The flour now can get out of my way at the very least, maybe back up. But now we're going to dump the dough out and start to knead it until it just barely comes together. And once again, it's pouring out a bit more solidly than I would like, but hopefully when I give it the kneading it needs, it'll hold shape a bit better than I'm expecting it to. But I think that's probably about as much as I'm going to be able to get out of there, so let's get to work and see if we can bring this together. Eventually we'll have to try to turn this over, but I don't want to turn it over and knead it on the underside until I'm sure that flipping this over isn't going to cause it to fall completely apart on me. I think now we're at the point where we're going to have to try pretty soon to turn it though. All right. This may be where that extra little splash of buttermilk comes back to haunt me, because I don't think it's holding together as well as I was expecting it to, but I think now we are going to have to try to turn this. All right. Okay, actually it seemed like it held pretty well for the most part. So we'll knead it here. And it seems like it's holding together so far as I'm trying to knead this. Turn it over again. And now it's getting even more crumbly. Well, that seems to be holding together. Alright, so that's probably about how the best we're going to be able to get with that. So now let me just look at the next step. So I'm actually going to turn the camera off for a second here so I can prepare the next step. But in order to do that, I need to wash my hands because I don't feel much like getting any more flour than is necessary on the camera. So now let's get ready for the next step of the recipe. The next thing we're going to do, and I grabbed my rolling pin out to help me with this, is we're going to roll the dough into a 1-inch tall rectangle. So we'll start by pressing this down. And I'm not actually going to grab my measuring... I'm not actually going to grab like a measuring tape or a ruler or anything like that. I'm just going to eyeball it. I will, however, grab my rolling pin to help me out with this process, now that I'm somewhat ready for it. Okay. Also a lousy approximation of a rectangle, but we'll manage. So now what we want to do is we want to fold the top third of the dough towards us. Easy does it. Okay. Then we'll fold the bottom third over the top of that. And then we'll re-roll it down. Actually, I'll start by pressing it. Try to move it just a touch. I don't want to move it too much. That'll work. I was trying to lift and set it, but I think the slide like that worked a bit better. Start off with the press. Now I think we're ready for the pin. See if I can, there we go. I mostly wanted to make sure I didn't have the pin in the way of the pin near the microwave, so I could actually get the handle on this side all the way through, so I can roll it a bit more away from me. Okay. All right, now we're going to do that same fold again. Fold it about like that, and then this over the top. It's not going to go all the way over the top though, but we are going to roll it out. We are going to flatten it out one last time. I don't think this is going to flatten out exactly like I've got in mind, but I think this will work at any rate. Okay, it's going to be a bit of a mess getting this cleaned up, but cooking is sometimes messy. So I think we're all set there. Giving my hands a quick wash so I can prepare for the next step. I won't need to turn the camera off for this one though. However, for the next step of the recipe, I will need to do two things. First will be to grab a knife, which this will do nicely. And the second thing I'll need to do is line a baking sheet with parchment paper, which I'm going to do that off camera. Two reasons I'm doing the parchment paper off camera. One, you guys are probably smart enough to understand line a baking sheet with parchment paper without me showing you how to do it. And two, there's just not a lot of room over by the camera right now. I will put the baking sheet down though, that is just slightly off shot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the dough into 16 portions. I don't think they're going to be even portions though. just because of the weird rectangle that I've got here. So let's see what I can do here. Let's go 1. We're also going to get some weird sized biscuits coming out of this, but again, nothing I can really do there. And we'll cut right there. We'll separate these out as best we can. Okay. And then we'll start cutting towards the camera. And I can probably start moving these over to the baking sheet since that'll be their eventual destination. Hopefully they'll fit on this baking sheet as I'm cutting them up. And this should be the last cut on the biscuits. Okay. And now for the million-dollar question of will they all fit on the one baking sheet that I grabbed? We are going to find that out in about 30 seconds from the looks of it, if that. Probably have to knead that together a little bit more. That is not holding. Let's see, can we get one more on here? Probably going to take a little bit of biscuit gymnastics, but I think the answer should be yes. And hey, would you look at that? All the biscuits managed to fit on the baking sheet. So now what we're going to do with that is we're going to set them in the freezer for 30 minutes. Hopefully the baking sheet will fit in here and close. Let's see, fits and closes. So I'll set a kitchen timer for 30 minutes. And we'll come back to that. Once again, by the power of editing, it'll look like half an hour, but it'll look like a moment, but it's really going to be about 30 minutes. Here are the biscuits fresh out of the freezer. While they were in the freezer, I preheated the oven to 425, and I've got the extra butter melted here. So this is the other some odd tablespoons of butter. So now we're going to take this butter and brush the biscuits with it. Normally I wouldn't bore you guys with the step of brushing the biscuits like this with the butter, but we're actually pretty near the end of the recipe, which I'm hoping we'll get to here pretty quick because I do have game day with my game group at my local game store later today. See if we can get a little more on this biscuit in particular. We will... Okay. That's working nicely. We'll drizzle this over just a little bit. That's a bit more than a little bit, but there's nothing we can do about it now. What we will do, though, is we'll move to the next step of the recipe, which involves me getting the camera out of the way so I can put the biscuits in the oven for about 20 minutes, and that's where they'll bake until ideally they're golden brown, or for 20 minutes. So I'll set a kitchen timer for 20 minutes, and we'll come back after those come out of the oven. I also gave the biscuits a little bit of time to cool on a wire rack after I got them out of the oven. So they look great, maybe a little undercooked, but that's kind of the nature of my oven. Anyway, we'll go ahead and plate one of these, and then I'll meet you guys over at my desk for the taste test. I've got one of the biscuits here. They were actually a little bit more buttery than I was expecting to be. The baking sheet was a little bit of a tight fit, but I was able to make everything fit. Anyway, let's give this a taste and see what I think. These biscuits actually are pretty good. They're very cheesy, but that's to be expected since I upped the cheese a little bit. Also a little bit on the buttery side, but I don't mind that at all. Also probably due to the fact that there was a bit of splashed butter on there and all the brushed butter on there, kind of making it very buttery. But that's another episode of Mystical Munchies in the books. Next week is going to be actually a Friday upload, and I'll be traveling. I'll be over on the other side of the state to see my family for Christmas, but I am still going to be continuing to make videos, not just Mystical Munchies. Next week we'll be into the entree, Jumpstart Energy Bowls. As for the games on this side of the state, later this afternoon we're going to play another baseball game as we play season ticket baseball. I want to start knocking off a little bit of rust for my 1985 season replay starting in January. Tomorrow morning, we're actually going to finish Christmas in Arkham with another stream of TTS at my desk as we play Elder Sign. Yogg-Sothoth has very much trounced us in Christmas in Arkham. Hopefully we can salvage a disaster in Elder Sign. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone. Thank you.